Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to the next session of Inside the Business Mind. Today, we have a phenomenal guest for you today. Mr. Adiyb Muhammed really needs no introduction. He is a superstar in every sense of the word in terms of what he's been able to do for the DC entertainment area, what he's able to do in film, what he's able to do in acting as a coach, as a director, as a writer. He is a little superstar. I'm so glad to have him in the studio today, and I'm so proud to be able to help him and my fellow colleague Darren Marcourt with their current situation when it comes to having their board retreat for the Actors Center. It was phenomenal, great time, just a super group of people, and I'm glad to see that his leadership is basically taking off and going in the right direction and helping them move the needle and move the opportunities forward for the community here in the Washington metropolitan area. Thank you for all you do, Mr. Muhammad, and it's great to have you on the show.
Well, Marvin, thank you, man, for having me. I really appreciate you, bro. I must admit, man, for all those who are listening, you did an absolutely phenomenal job in facilitating our board retreat for the Actor Center in DC, man, and we really appreciate you for that.
I had a great time, man. I had a great time. I have to say, and those things usually take a lot out of me because I am an introvert. I would much rather be home with my ideas, doing the things I want to do, and pulling information from brilliant people like you guys, man. It takes a lot out of me because there's just so much going on, and like this is a lot of social energy I'm exuding. But I'm getting used to it as I do more. I've done hundreds of these, but it just seems like I'm getting better and better as I do it, and I'm feeling better about it. The skills are there. It's just about knowing how to process it myself. So anyway,
Okay.
Let's get right into it. Everybody wants to know, who is Adiyb Muhammed?
Well, Adiyb Muhammad is a native Washingtonian who grew up in Washington, D.C. I was born in 1955, so I've seen the city go through some wonderful and evolving changes over my years. I first, I guess my first foray in the entertainment period is when I was 13, 14, well, actually 12, 13, 14, and 15. I used to sing with a little singing group, my cousins and my friends and I. It was four of us. Well, it was five of us actually, and then it dropped to four. But we started a little singing group, and we used to sing old Motown songs and stuff like that at what they call Our Lady of Perpetual Help talent show every year in Southeast. I guess that could be said to be my first foray into entertainment. I went on, came out of high school, went into the military because I'm a Vietnam era vet. I was in the military from 1972 to 1976 in the Army as a clinical specialist, meaning I worked in the hospital. I was stationed in Korea, came back from Korea, was fortunate enough to be stationed at Walter Reed here in my hometown, and eventually ETS'd out of the military at Fort Dix. Went to college, went to school under a college program that the Kennedys started, which was for low and moderate income people to be able to afford to go to college back in the 70s. And so I had an opportunity to go to Howard University, UDC, and American University, believe it or not, which was cool. So I was considered an alum from all three of those schools because of the program. I met, when I was at Howard University, I had a professor, Garrett, who used to run the African Studies Department and all of that. And that man changed my life, that's when I first began to understand dialectical thinking and that there were different views that could come out. Well, you could take a certain situation and look at it from different views and you both be right, right? So it kind of broadened my perspective and understanding of how to analyze things. Some years passed. I went from doing stuff like I've been a little bit of everything when I think about it. I was a carpenter. I was a garbage man on the garbage truck. I was mortgage banker. I've been a mortgage broker. I've been assistant at a bank. I mean, I've had a lot of jobs in my years because I always looked at it like I started my first business when I was 22. In order to facilitate my business, I had to sometimes have employment. So I would take jobs and stuff just to facilitate building my business and buying the products that I used to sell, like oils, incense, and books and stuff. So I eventually get in I'm doing a lot of capsulizing, but I eventually get an opportunity in my 40s because I knew absolutely nothing about the internet, and it was evolving. I used to send my son to camp, Microsoft camp. So him and my brother knew about computers. I didn't. And then I had an opportunity to work for a company that was about to go public called CGX Communication. They changed their name to Case Internet. At the time, I was working at at the heating and air conditioning service company in the evening. And one of the guys that was with CGS Communication said to me, "Man, you communicate exceptionally well. I listen to how you talk to your customers and stuff, man. You know anything about computers?" I said, "No, absolutely not." He said, "Well, look, you're a salesperson. You articulate fairly well. So there's an opportunity. They building the sales force. They're going to go public and all of this." And I was like, "Okay, I'll check it out." He said, "Man, go there." So I went to the interview. And when the guy asked me the question, did I know anybody? Have I worked on computers? I told a little white lie and said, "Oh yeah, I'm computer proficient. Didn't know how to do anything on a computer." So, but I got with my little brother and I got with my son, and they taught me how to double click. So 3 weeks later, when I actually started, I knew how to sign in. I knew how to open the computer. And then the beauty of it was the company became Case Internet. It was one of the hottest things in the internet industry from 2000, well, from 1999 to about 2002. We was at the top of the food chain as far as connectivity. And I was number 3 in the company in sales. My brother used to laugh at me because as I was learning, because the company taught me everything about the internet and everything. And it was like, all right, I went from not knowing anything, not knowing how to double click, to being the man. So, and then ultimately at 50, I stumbled into acting. My life changed dramatically in the inside. Out of all the years, out of all the things I'd done, when I stumbled into acting, I took a friend of mine to her stage play, and the lady that wrote the play came out and asked me to be in it. And I was like, "Oh, no, I ain't never acted." And she said, "Well, it's just a small role, blah, blah, blah." I said, "Well, I tried." So I went into the rehearsals, got to understand a little bit about the business, preparing for this play to do this role, and got bit by the proverbial acting bug and fell in love with it and said to myself, this is something I could do for the rest of my life. And when I said that to myself, being my age, I guess, and that entrepreneurial spirit in me said, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm not a kid, so I don't have all these years to be hitting and missing. So I started, 2 things happened. One, I was fortunate enough to go from one play to another play to another play. And somebody said to me, "Oh man, you ever heard of the Actor Center?" I said, "Nah." I joined the Actor Center and it was crazy cool then. But anyway, 2 things happened. I was fortunate enough to go from play to play to play because DC is a theater town. And the second thing was I had enough money to invest in mentors to teach me acting, who were at the top of the game, who were known as some of the best acting coaches and teachers, like John Pilata out of New York, Vera Katz out of DC, who's, oh my gosh, famously known for teaching some of the top successful actors in the game from Howard, Stephen Mitchell from LA, who now resides in Australia, and just a plethora of different teachers. The Actor Center membership, well, I'll come back to that. So I was fortunate enough to invest in becoming better in the skill of acting. John Pilata, my New York acting coach and teacher, who used to come to DC once a week, he said to me one time in the course of a conversation, he said, if you want to be successful in this business, the only way I could absolutely ensure my success is not only be on stage myself as an actor or in front of the camera, but provide opportunity for other people. When he said that, the light bulb, ding, 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 the bells went off, and I said, how can I provide opportunity for other people? Now, I had been in, like, at that time, I probably had been in like 8 plays, something like that. I said, well, shoot, what I'll do is I start a production company. And in the starting of a production company, who at that time I specifically focused on creating theatrical projects. So I started producing stage plays and co-producing stage plays with other people. And thus, over the years, acquired some skills, a great reputation. And I felt really good because I believe that in anything, your success is always in direct relationship to how many people you willing to help, serve, or benefit in some positive way. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
You know, that reminds me so much of the reasons why we're talking in the first place is, you know, my buddy Darren said, you know, you got to meet Adiyb. Adiyb is just amazing. And Adiyb is just wonderful. And then he started telling me a little bit about you, and just a little bit that he knew. I realized really quickly, like he didn't even understand who this guy really is. And I knew a lot more simply because I'm a native Washingtonian. You know, I grew up, you know, dealing with and experiencing the world that, you know, you were a part of in many different ways. And I'm like, oh my God, I got to meet this guy because we're going to have so much in common. And boy, did we. The first two things I ask you when I start talking about the vision, the true voice process that I use for every one of these interviews I do, I always do them. And I make sure I've done thousands of interviews with thousands of professionals in every aspect of you that you can imagine. And I always ask the same questions the same way. The answers that you gave me were the only one who answered those questions in the way that you answered the questions. And I'm like, I can identify with this brother. I know who he is. I understand where he's coming from. And there's two things that you said that I want you to expound upon today. When I asked you the vision questions, the two things that jumped out really immediately and quite frankly that blew me away was your desire to have an impact with the youth and your desire to do what you can to end poverty and hopelessness. Tell me about those things, Adiyb. Where does that come from in you?
Wow. It comes from two places. One is when I was a young person myself, my personal experience of at 14, around 13, 14 years old, my uncle, Carl Henson Sr., who has a very famous son, Carl Henson Jr., who's my cousin, known as Mr. C in D.C. He used to work for the lottery board, all these things. He planted a seed in me that spoke to what's possible for an African-American man to do beyond go to work and come home, right? And it didn't dawn on me at the time, but when I reflect on my own experience, the mere fact that he planted the seed, because he was the first, he explained to me, he was the first Black man to have a mail contract in Annapolis, M-A-I-L, mail contract. He was the first Black man, the first Black bondsman to provide a means by which people who had issues with the whole legal thing, he was a bond person. And he was the first, and he was very proud of that. So it planted kind of a seed in me. Secondly, when I was in the military, when I first came home from the military, I worked at the forensic psychiatric unit over at DC General. The forensic psychiatric unit over at DC General is set up and designed to evaluate people to see if they're competent to stand trial, right? So here it is. I'm coming from the military, well-trained in psychiatrics and detox and those type of things. And I'm working at the forensic psychiatric unit. And by me being a native Washingtonian, I was seeing people that I actually knew, right? And so my thing was, and not only myself, but another brother who had been in the military, I think he was in the Navy as a medic or whatever. Him and I saw the same thing. So we kind of linked. And what we saw was this. The forensic psychiatric unit was set up designed to evaluate people to see if they were competent to stand trial. But in that evaluation and analysis, in our mind, how can you come to the conclusion to see if they're competent if you keep them drugged up all the time? Right. So we saw it wasn't no synergy in that in our minds. Right. So it caused a little problem. We became known as people that always was talking about, well, maybe we need to do this better and all of this. So they looked at us, two young dudes, and y'all worrying about stuff you shouldn't be worrying about. This is how we operate. Yeah, I'm from DC, and I would see people I know. So I'm like, it was personal.
Beyond your pay grade.
Right. It was personal to me. So that lended to a situation in which I started working. I left the forensic psychiatric unit. And because of having to go down to the health department down there on North Capitol Street, when I was complaining about how they was operating, I found out how things work politically. And at the time I was in college, I was getting ready to go to college for political science with a business minor. So I got an opportunity to work with Marion Barry's youth, what they call the Youth Congress. The Youth Congress was set up and designed for young people between the age of 14 to 21 to get a clarity as to how the city operated in terms of the school board, the city council, the mayor's office, and all of these entities that made decisions that impact their experience in their lives. And so I kind of developed a love for working with these young people because I wasn't much older. I was only 22 at the time, and the kids were from 14 to 18. So some of them was just a few years behind me, but with a little slightly different experience. So I kind of like love working with young people. And I saw how important it is that young people develop a sense of how things operate around them, how people make decisions that impact their experience. And that became very dear to me. So in everything I do, quite frankly, I always keep in mind, and this has been for quite a while, even now, I love working with young people and helping them come to an understanding earlier about how accountable they can be for their own decisions in relationship to what's going on around them, so they don't get caught up in things that sometimes you get caught up in because of a ignorance and a misunderstanding of the power you have to influence your circumstance, your situation. What I mean by that is it's different if a kid feels a lack of hope and a feeling of disconnect because they feel as though they are impacted by stuff outside themselves that they can't control. But the one thing they can control is how they respond to anything. They might not be able to control the situation, circumstances that come their way as a result of things they can't control, but they can always control their response when they learn and identify that they can. Because the hopelessness, in my opinion, come from a sense of I can't do anything about something, as opposed to, okay, I can't do anything about that, but I don't have to respond in this way that's detrimental to my existence, detrimental to my health. I don't have to use drugs. I don't have to run in a gang and do things, quote unquote, illegal to create what I think I need, like money, for instance. I ain't got to go out here and break in cars, rob people, and all that crazy stuff as a reaction to my poverty, right? I can, in this,
Take your time. Matter of fact, I'm gonna take a minute and share some things that, of course, you just brought up as you began to discuss this. Dr. Stephen Covey says, in between a stimulus and a response is our ability to choose. And the true power of each and every human is how we handle that response ability.
Yeah.
You know, and he literally took those two words apart to let us understand that we have the ability to respond. And everyone has different abilities, but there's no way that any of us can be robbed of our ability to respond. And that was one of the most empowering bits of research I read when I first read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That was one of the first and most important things to me. And I understand that you also understand that when you started talking about that in our interview. And the other thing that brought me, when I started getting into, okay, we got out of vision, we started getting into obstacles. And usually when people see obstacles to their vision and what they're trying to accomplish, they start looking at things outside of themselves that they can't control. This is an obstacle I got to watch out for. The first thing you said to me, well, I don't really see any obstacles that are outside of my own mind and my own ability to choose. And I was like, this brother is got it going on. He has absolutely got it going on. And, and it made me feel so good because I'm like, wow, okay. I used to watch, so many programs and television shows. I read so many books by men of your thought. Man, how come we don't have any more of them? Where'd they go? We need them right now. Case is, in reality, y'all never left.
Yeah, one of the things that impacted my life because of the fact that, I'm proud to say I'm an avid reader. And that was established very young because the funny thing is, I was a little mischievous as a child, like I guess in that 8, 9, 10 years, 11-year-old. So one of the things my mother used to do, instead of beat me and stuff, she used to punish me. And my punishment was, you can't watch television, you can't listen to music, go in your room. But she didn't say you couldn't read books, right? So I would be on punishment. My mother was the type, you get 7 to 14 days in punishment, right? And for what she thought was a punishment.
And she meant it, right?
Huh? Say it again.
She meant it, right?
Oh, she did.
My mother would do 7 and say, are you going to be on punishment for 3 weeks? But she let me out the next day.
Yeah. My mother wasn't that mother. My mother was like, look, you in here. Now, sometimes she say some days and come in after 4 or 5. But no, ain't no next day action. You're going to feel it. So she used to say, okay, you can come out of punishment. But what happened, I started reading. And at that time, I'm going to tell you what I was reading. I was reading the Bible. I was reading Jehovah's Witnesses used to come through our neighborhood, and they had this big orange book called Paradise, which was a spin on the Bible, right? So I read that. In my neighborhood also was the Nation of Islam at the time, and they was passing out the final call. So I used to see this, and I would get these things, right? And I would read them. I started reading, and that just opened up my thinking. It also broadened my perspective of understanding. I used to love National Geographics. I mean, all of these things, these books and magazines, I started getting into and just reading them. And some of them, when I think back, it was just, for me, it was just the enjoyment of reading and seeing that there was more than my neighborhood, more than my school, more than my understanding of what I saw on television. And at that time, we didn't have but like 4 channels. Seemed like we had but 4 channels. What I remember, 9, 7, 5, and 4. Oh yeah, then we had channel 20 came out. So we may have had 5, 6 channels, right? I remember at night.
WDCA channel 20.
Remember the national anthem used to come on at night and the channel would go off and it get boop, that kind of thing, right? But in essence, one of the books that I read when I guess I was about, 2 things. My uncle turned me on to Black Enterprise, so I started reading that. And then when I got a little older, I came across Dr. Wayne Dyer. Dr. Wayne Dyer's book Your erroneous zones open my mind to understand how accountable I am myself for the decisions I make and those experiences and results that come from my decision making. That sunk in so hard that as I evolved, I always felt, well, I can respond to things differently. And I mean, I went through some stuff. I mean, the military, as much as I love the discipline and the broadening of my mind and my perspective in the military, it wasn't a great experience because I was in there at the height of a certain level of racism that I encountered that I wasn't emotionally prepared for. And it caused me to change my trajectory in terms of my initially thinking I was going to do 20 years, which I would have, I went in at 16 going on 17. So I would have actually retired around 36, 37 years old after 20 years, which in my mind, that was kind of the plan, right? That didn't go well because of the racism I encountered, which is another story you can read about in my autobiography, A Dialectical Journey, Overcoming a Limited Life, coming your way soon. We'll talk about that another time. But it's as a result of Dr. Wayne Dyer's erroneous zones that introduced me to self-development, self-improvement. I came across another, man, The Strangest Secret, Earl Nightingale. That was another impactful thing that I read that caused me to really look at my life in comparison to other people my age who were having certain types of experiences because of how they made decisions about how they looked at the work world, how they looked at the choice they made about what they did with the 8 hours that determined a certain group of people at a certain time acquiring wealth and a certain group of people after a certain time acquiring or going into poverty or just making it. So all these things was planted in my head, like Earl Nightingale. I mean, just a plethora of thinkers. As I come into a more modern time, like now, right, I look at people like Les Brown, Tony Robbins, Dean DeGraziosi, just a whole bunch of thinkers, people that deal in the area of thought. And they say, well, if you do things differently, you get a different result. And that has held true in my life because not that my life has been perfect, but every ail that I've experienced, even going from having what people consider a lot, house and cars and all that stuff, to becoming homeless because of making bad decisions, right? I looked at those as lessons, not losses, because I survived those situations and circumstances, and they lend to me being a better version of myself. And in my world, the best version I can be of myself, the best impact I can have in my interactions with younger people, because they have energy, they have a technological savvy, they have a path in front of them where they open to new understandings and new visions. And I feel like I can be instrumental in just sharing my story, my experience, what led to me becoming emotionally intelligent, meaning I learned because of all these experiences how to deal with things that when you're young, you see, oh man, this is end all, this is the world. And in reality, it's just a moment. And if you can get through that moment and you come to the realization that everything in your life is as temporary as you make it, not what the situation is, because when you change, the world changes.
That reminds me of something that I got out of your interview as well, when you were saying, when I asked you about intuitively, what do you need to be cognizant of and aware of at all times? And the thing that you said was to be constantly engaged in the learning process such that you could master the issues and the things that you have to master to move things forward. And I was like, oh my God, that's just a wonderful answer. Is there more? Do you have anything more to share when it comes to that mastery piece? Why is that so important to you?
Well, what I found is that, say, for instance, we make choices about something we want to be. And I say be because a lot of times people approach things from the perspective of what they want to do, right? So when you talk about mastery in any area, in my opinion, you first have to say to yourself, who do I have to be in order to do those things? Who do I have to be in order to experience those things? So when you think in terms of who you have to be, that's about you becoming other than who you are at that moment. So when you look at it from the standpoint of who would I have to be, and you start looking around at all of the people who are experiencing what you wish to experience, who are they? How are they? What is it about what you see them doing? But who are they being while they doing it? Right? So when I look at that, then I kind of in my head reverse engineer what skills I have to have, what knowledge do I have to have, and it all lends to my understanding that there's certain things I don't know. So I have to go into this process of learning that's accepting of the uncertainty of things that I don't have any idea about. So I have to go into it with understanding, okay, I have to learn some stuff. That means I have to come to some type of cognitive understanding of what is it that this person that I want to become knows. Then I have to understand, well, what tools or strategies as a result of what they know are they employing that's allowing them to be successful in that area? It sounds like a lot, but what it boils down to, you have to have a willingness and acceptance of this is the case. I got to put some time into this. There's a combination of time and focus until I'm no longer feeling the anxiety of the uncertainty, because now I've learned it in a way that I can exercise and implement it to get that result I'm trying to get. And it has worked for me because I've never had to explain it like I'm explaining it, but I go through the process and the result comes out exactly. And the crazy part is I just get into what do I need to be, how do I need to be, and what do I need to become in order to experience that. I can't say I'm an actor and don't act. I can't say I'm a producer and don't produce anything. I can't say I'm a cinema director and don't direct anything. I can't say I'm a writer and don't write, right? So at different times, mastery, well, I'm jumping all over the place. I don't mean to. But mastery is when you've immersed yourself into something for a specific period of time that you had the willingness to do it over and over and over and over again till the anxiety about it is gone and it feels like second nature. At that point, you can consider yourself to have mastered that. Of course, even in mastery, you can get better because there's no such thing in my world as perfection, but there is the pursuit of perfection. Right? So if you're continuously engaged in doing what you say you love to do, then you're naturally going to get better in it and better in it to the point that in relationship to others, hey, it is you to master that. That's how I see it.
That's why when I created the True Voice process, I realized that what I was going to be able to draw out of people was a part of their character that they don't often get to share with others. When people are asking them, what do you do? What can I count on you for? What are you good at? You know, it's not the same. It's not the same questions that draw out your character, why you exist and how you are. In fact, when Dr. Maulana Karenga first taught me what he was trying to bring out into the world when he started to introduce Kawaida theory, he was talking about answering three questions. Who am I? Am I really who I say I am? And am I all that I ought to be? Which lit me up when you started talking about your thoughts about mastery. I'm like, that's what Dr. Karenga was talking about. He was talking about knowing so much about your own thoughts, your own self, and your own development to the point where you got a comfort of just you in your own skin, showing up anywhere you want to show up, knowing that you were worthy of whatever it is that you were trying to do, and that didn't get in your way anymore. There's no more of that stuff. And you reinforced and said it twice, even today. This is how I know this is a part of who you are. You said, but even when I interviewed you first time, you mentioned how important it was to never give up on your vision, to create cash flows, to be specific about the verticals, that you're trying to do. And you, again, reinforcing the same things over and over again as we continue to talk, which means this is who you are. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And that's who we can trust. We can trust that you're going to be this way yesterday, today, and tomorrow, because you've come to that point where, I guess, the Buddhists and the Eastern philosophers would say enlightenment, when you come to that point where you kind of recognize yourself and you honor yourself and you know what you're talking about when it comes to you. That's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to get to. But you also said, I'm on constant pursuit of that. Constant pursuit.
Because the pursuit never stops.
And I love that. And I love that thought part.
Yeah, because when you're young, because even myself, when I was younger, I always kind of looked at things like, okay, I want to do this, right? And then I'm going to share this experience with you. I've never shared this with anyone before. When I was young and I decided...
Before you share that experience,
okay,
time out. Understand, this is going to be recorded and broadcasted. And so
okay, I understand.
I want you to think about it again before you share. Okay.
I had thought about it because I knew you were going to broadcast this. And I think, at this time in my life, maybe I can share this and maybe somebody will get something from it, that it helped me get something from it, where things aren't what people would consider perfect, but I'm always in the pursuit of perfection, meaning that I don't always do things exactly right, because I'm, as a growing person, because you never stop growing. I don't care if you're 80 years old, there's always something new, especially in this evolving world. But this is what I experienced that I think maybe somebody could learn something from. And I've really never shared this, particularly in public, right? When I was a young man, and I said to myself around 18, 19 years old, I'm going to buy me a house by the time I'm 30. Everything in my life, the different businesses I got into, the different things I pursued at that time to create an income stream, the ups and downs of relationships, all of these types of things I had experienced never deterred me from at 30 years old buying my first house, right? At that same time, of course, I had my own business. I don't even think I was working for nobody at that time when I bought my house. It was just on the basis of the income that I created in my business. And when I got that house and I looked around in my world at the time, I was married. I had my house. I had 3 cars, I think, and my business was going along fine. And something in me changed because I felt as though I was there. It was a sense I was there. And what happened in my experience, I stopped focusing on the things that got me there. It's like a person that all of a sudden has money and don't know how to manage it because they didn't continually learn how to manage it and they got distracted. And this is what happened in my life. My cousin at the time, they was involved in some illegal activity in the street, selling drugs or whatever. And he came and borrowed some money from me. And it was like, I think I gave him like $1,000 or whatever. At that time, I didn't know exactly what it was for, but he came and borrowed the $1,000. And he came back and bought me my $1,000 back in like 8 hours. And I was like, hold up, how you do that? Right? And I, being dumb, right? Looking at it simply from the standpoint, well, if I can give you money and you get my money back and you can turn my money like that, then that's another stream of income, right? I started involving myself in what he was doing, and eventually I lost everything, right? And I think when I think back on that, how that was able to happen to me being as smart as I am and all of that, I stopped evolving. I stopped learning. I stopped growing in a way that was beneficial and positive for me. I allowed myself to get caught up in other people's activities simply because we was connected. They was family. And I looked at it simply from, okay, it's a money thing, blah, blah, blah. But ultimately it turned into me losing everything because I got caught up in areas I shouldn't have been caught up in. And it came because I didn't stay on my purpose, on those things that was keeping my life right. Because the thing that I was able to acquire and get to the point where I bought my house at 30, I ain't dealing with what everybody else did around me in the street. I stayed on this particular type of path.
Right.
But when I got to the point where I felt as though I had reached what I was trying to do, I lost that sense of me continuing to go for something. And to this day, I don't regret it, but at the time, it threw me off. It threw me way off, right? And then ultimately, I came back because I also feel that a part of your strength of character is not how you fall, but it's how you get up, you know. And I feel blessed and grateful for that. But it was this sense of oh, well, I did everything I said I was going to do. I got all this material stuff. That's what it boiled down to. I had acquired all this material stuff that I thought was important, and I got caught up in. I got away from the spiritual, the emotional, and those things that keep you elevated. And I felt like I had everything because I was surrounded. I had created a situation where I had the house, the cars, the money, and all of that. So I allowed myself to get distracted by getting involved with other people's activity and not staying true to myself. So I hope it's a lesson in that for somebody.
I got to remind everybody. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I need to remind everybody, the last question I asked you was about the environment. And I asked you, what kind of things might the political, social, economic, technical, legal, ecosystem type of environments, what might you have to watch out for? And you, without hesitation, without even missing a beat, what you said was, I deal in awareness. And I'm like, what you mean? What's that all about? And then you went ahead to what you meant about that. And I thought, this guy is not going to be deterred by, what's going on around him, because he's going to try to understand everything he needs to understand about himself and what's going on around him. So that if he makes a mistake, it's a natural mistake. He bounces back from it. He keeps on pushing. And I was like, that is a lesson for so many entrepreneurs and business leaders to learn, not to be complacent, right? Mm-hmm. Not to choose the easy path when, the right path is the right path, and you generally know the right path, and you definitely know when you're getting off the right path because you've made some decisions that are just too easy. When it starts to come too easy, you got to ask yourself those questions, like, am I doing the right thing? And how long can I continue to do this thing that seems to be so easy? Is that going to continue? Does that make any sense? And you found out those lessons in your life the hard way. I have to say, this has been one of my favorite interviews that I've ever had a chance to do.
Well, that's where, because I think I mentioned to you in our previous interview how, based on my own experiences of failing, along with my mentors who have failed and overcame those failures to achieve massive success, right? And so when I'm around people, or I'm learning from my mentors, because the one thing I can honestly say that has helped me immensely is my willingness to learn from others who are successful, as opposed to saying, and I sometimes see people do this, they say, oh, well, I'm doing okay. I'm doing this. I ain't doing that. And they're experiencing what they feel is really good at the time, but with a lack of willingness to learn something else that could potentially may not need that information right then, but they may come, especially in business, because the more successful in your business you are monetarily, the better decisions you have to make in order to continue where you are and to grow. Because if you're not growing, you're dying. I don't care who you are, how well you're doing, because there's a constant evolution within the process of business, in which your business has to expand from just the transaction of products or services. there has to be different components in it, particularly in this day and time, in which there are other aspects of you doing business that you may not have even imagined. Because in the old way of doing business, when I say old, when I was in my 20s and 30s, there wasn't no podcast, there wasn't no social media, there wasn't these things that lend to you increasing your visibility as a business beyond your geographical location. And in today's world, particularly as you see with Amazon and Walmart and all these businesses who do transactions online, because that increases their audience, increases their prospective customers and all that. That's how they continue to grow. So you as a small business in my world, you still have to think that way, to reach greater audiences. So, but back to my point. My point is that within these failures, there are lessons that's learned that should say to you that you constantly have to learn more, and you constantly have to expand your team. And you have to understand real powers and collective cooperative effort on the part of a few people that lend to, when you see individuals who have been successful, even myself, everywhere in my success, there has been so many other people that lended to my ability to be successful, think the way I think, which lends to my getting certain types of results. Because if it had not been for them sharing with me certain things that I didn't understand, that I've now come to understand, and as I move, one of the things I'm so proud to say is that I have an Instagram handle called Youthful Senior. That's UTHFUL Senior. And that Instagram is for the express purposes of expressing the importance of younger people and older people coming together for collaborative business success, right? And that's my way of expressing the absolute need of younger people to work with older people who have a certain amount of wisdom, and for older people to work with younger people within that wisdom, but learn from these young people today's experience, how things operate today, particularly in the way of technology. Their savviness in technology, along with your wisdom, you put those two things together, that's real power. And in my world, that really comes from Afrocentric thinking in terms of the power of a community. It comes from older people and younger people coming together. And the younger people bring that energy. They bring these new, refreshing ideas. And the older people, because of their emotional intelligence and experience, they can help those younger people express those ideas in ways as they're about to express it that could cause issue. And the older person has gone through that part of it already. So let me help you avoid this aspect of your new idea. Right. And have that willingness to work together and to me, that's real power.
I agree with you 100%, Brother Muhammad. This has been such a phenomenal interview. It's been like one of my favorites. I have to say, hands down, absolutely one of my favorites. We got to end the show because I'm coming upon time, so I'm gonna have to put you backstage. But I don't want you to go nowhere, because we got to talk some more. We got to talk some more. So just hold tight. Let me close the show. I'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, as I promised, the brilliance, the mind, the opportunity that is Adiyb Muhammad has graced us with his presence, with his knowledge, with his ability, with his talent. And if you get a chance to follow him on LinkedIn, I'm gonna put his LinkedIn address in the show notes, and I'm gonna put his handle, that from Instagram in the show notes, so that you can go visit him on Instagram. You probably can use the hashtag and find him in all kinds of different places. I'll try to put his website out there with his permission and all that kind of stuff, so you can stay contacted and linked with him. But he's an amazing person, an amazing character in terms of, he is a character. He has the character that you need to have in your business, in your life, and it might help you push yourself forward, and he's open forward. And so I'm so glad to have him as our guest, and I'm so glad to close out the show with this note. Find the thing that you love, find the thing that's passionate for you, no matter how long it takes you, and it's never too late to get started. Brother Muhammad just lets you know you can make the shift, you can make the switch, you can do the thing that you really, really want to do, the thing that lights you up, and that will allow you to engage others and participate in this world fully so that you can completely enjoy all the things that you're supposed to enjoy. You're supposed to have a life of fulfillment. You're supposed to have a life of understanding. You're supposed to be successful, not just because somebody else says so, because that's what you were born to do. My friends, I'm so proud to close this episode of Inside the Business Mind out. I'm glad Brother Muhammad was here to share his ideas with you. Anytime you want to get in contact with me, my number, everything's run across the screen. You can pick up the phone. You can contact us. If you're watching this recording and you want to make a comment in the comment section on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, please do so. I'll get back with you if I can, or one of our other listeners will get back with you if they can. But this is all about community. I love the fact that Brother Muhammad mentioned that. This is all about community, and we need to make sure that we keep this party going. So don't keep us a secret. Share this video, share this opportunity with as many people as you possibly can, so they too can feel what it means to bring yourself up, to be able to bond with other people, to find the new information, work with your mentors. I mean, if you didn't learn any lesson from Mr. Muhammad, you should learn that one. You know, pay attention to others that have something to say in your industry, in your specific vertical, wherever that is, and listen to them, invite them in, participate and engage with them, get the real scoop about how they did whatever they did. You need to know so that you might either learn from it or not make the same mistakes and grow even faster. It's just an amazing opportunity. I love you guys. Thank you for paying attention, and I hope you had a great time. I know I did. And off we go.